And when we talk about masculinity, kindness and genuine kindness and accepted by the other person.
It becomes weaponized against us then. Hi, everybody. Kevin here. I've got a great guest with me today. And it's just strange to say guest, but this is the way it's going, isn't it? Hi, Philippe. This is Phillipe Walker. Hello.
How are you?
How you
Nice to
doing?
be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's really good having you here as well. Just to let everyone know, we've just been chatting a little bit. We chatted before as well, got to know each other somewhat, and we were talking about all kinds of issues and things. We're talking about parental alienation, about writing books and publishing or not publishing, which we'll talk a little bit about as well. And well, crikeys, how can anyone not talk about masculinity and things? And I think that's the very first thing maybe we'll touch on. But first, just like to hear a little bit how you're doing today, and yeah, how's things going?
Oh yes, I'm doing very well at the moment. Life comes and goes, doesn't it? It's never the same one day after the other. So
Yeah.
it's sometimes it's a struggle and sometimes it's quite good. Yeah.
Yes, I hear you there, man. I tell you what, wow. So let's go straight into, we were just saying like the last thing we chatted about was masculinity, and some people jump all over it. I'm pretty much the same with Philippe, kind of on the sidelines of it all and just looking in. I want to hear about this. Everyone else wants to hear about this. Let's chat briefly about masculinity. You go for it first.
Well, it's become a very controversial subject, hasn't it? You know, with the Andrew Tates and all those sort of people that come through. But it's also it's become a fairly difficult place for men to sit in.
It has actually,
As I
yeah.
was, one of the examples I was giving you was that I was on a panel, and one of the panel was a woman, and she was a pediatric consultant.
Right.
And her idea was that if a man says good morning to her without her first having broached him, he was guilty of assault. Now, if
So th-
that's just somebody saying good morning to you and it was the opposite sex and you're guilty of, where does that leave you?
it's a very scary place, and I've thought about that myself. I'm not sure where it leaves us, to be honest. I don't know. Where do you think it leaves us? I
Well,
don't know.
it leads you either to men being emasculated or men becoming toxic because they need somewhere to go, don't they?
So we become toxic in people's eyes for some strange reason. They've created laws against us, and the media has portrayed us. Hey, do you remember back? When was that? Back in the 1970s, the cartoon. I used to love this one. Wait till your father gets home. Do you remember that one? Oh, it was a
It
long time
says, but
ago.
I wasn't in England at the time.
Ah, right. This is an American show, mind you, as well. But just to recap, tiny little bit, it's all about it's just general day-to-day life. 2.4 children, and just the whole title of it, "Wait till your father gets home," actually says that the father had some kind of place. I don't know if you call it as a seniority place, whatever, but they held some kind of importance, and they kind of was like talk about discipline. That's not hitting or anything. It's just correction and through love. But wait till your father gets home. He's going to hear about it. No, I'm going to tell your father. It's all that kind of stuff. It's not around anymore. So I think.
Well, no, it's not around. I mean, when I was growing up, there was that in the general consensus, I think. But I grew up during the Rhodesian War, and a lot of men, parental age, I suppose, what happened was that they went into the army for 6 weeks and they came out for 6 weeks and they went back in for 6 weeks.
Okay.
If you did anything wrong and you had to wait for your father to get back, you would have forgotten what you did by the time you got back. So again, you see, it comes in. The women took over that role because the men were out of the way, you know. And I think one of the problems with masculinity we have at the moment is, you know, women have taken over a lot of roles, and I don't decry them doing that. They do it very well. Some of them can do it really extraordinarily well, but men themselves have not found where they sit
Okay.
when that role has been diminished by them.
In the most recent generations, would you say?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I still feel that the younger people, younger men, and I could be wrong because this is obviously my point of view.
Mhm.
I think men are struggling with the identity of what do they do. One of the clients that I had when I was a psychotherapist, she used to say, I don't like men telling me that I look good when I walk into the office when I've got a new suit on or something like that.
Mhm.
But I get very annoyed if my husband doesn't tell me that I look good in my suit.
That's a bit of a contradiction, or something's going on there, isn't it?
To a certain extent, I think it is because if you are paying a compliment to somebody without the sexual connection to it, that is just being polite and being kind. That where are we without politeness and kindness?
Has politeness and kindness become a rude thing then? A threatening thing? So it's got a word to it. I don't know what the word is, but it's not.
Well, it's. I was just thinking about this today because I've just had a builder in doing something in the house, and he was obviously straight with 3 or 4 kids, but he was very kind in that he would take away all my rubbish that I had building up
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. And it became very difficult to accept that he was straight because kindness like that is not something I've experienced from many straight men. Um, so you get that confused in men as well.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
No, I kind of think I understand what you're getting at there as well,
yeah,
because remember just being gentlemanly and just being kind and just decent for no gain whatsoever, just because my nan taught me, or the older generations, or just, it was polite. It was
yeah.
do a good deed for someone. But then I started noticing that some people would push that away, or some folks would say, no, no, I can do it, or and then you start getting little reactions. And I think over some time, I still open the doors for people, regardless of who. And I really appreciate it when folks see that it's not of any kind of reason that I want something in return. It's just polite and good manners. But it seems to be getting mixed up, the intentions now.
It does get mixed up, and I think a lot of people get mixed up with good manners um, as to being insulting to the opposite sex. When I first came to England, I was always taught that you got up for somebody who was older than you, whether it was male or female. So when I came to England, I was just 21 when I first came to England, and I got onto the bus one day and I sat down, and some old people, my age now, 60 and
Yeah.
above, I would suggest, got onto the bus, and I stood up. And there was a chorus from these older people about um, why am I giving up a seat to these people? Don't they aren't they able to stand up for themselves?
Wow.
What am am I insinuating that they're unable to do, stand up on their own 2 feet? So I
Oh,
thought,
God.
okay, maybe it's a one-off. And then on the tube, I sat down on the tube one day and I gave my seat up to another woman. And there was a young girl on the other side. And she ripped into me really loudly about how disgusting I was because you're being a sexist pig. You should have sat in that bloody chair because that is your right. Who do you think you are giving it? How dare you do this to me?
That just sounds like mental illness gone wrong. That does. And
And so I thought, okay, though that's fine. Okay, 2 out of 3. But maybe I'm just having a bad time, and this is London.
it comes in threes.
And then the third time was a very heavily pregnant woman got onto the tube,
Right.
and she was with her husband, and I got up and offered her my seat, and she looked me straight in the face and said, "No, but my husband will sit there instead."
Oh,
And I thought after that, I don't care. From now on, even if your bloody waters break, lady, you're going to stand, and I'm
yeah.
going to sit from now on. That's how I did feel.
It makes you kind of almost not know what to do, doesn't it? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I don't know. But to be honest with you, I think I'm still going to keep offering the seat. I'm still going to open the doors for whoever and so on. still smile and say hi, because as long as you and me and folks like us keep doing that, maybe we'll be able to break whatever new mold's been created and get back to politeness. That's just what we do, is polite.
Well, it is just um, one of the big things in life I have learned, and me being very philosophical here, is being kind. Kindness without expecting anything back
Yes.
is one of the most extraordinary tools that you can have.
Yes.
And if kindness happens to you, or you give kindness without thinking that you are being kind, that, and I really hate this word authentic. It comes from and I do hate this sort of um, this kind of talk. It comes from a place of truth. Ugh.
Okay. Okay. I
That,
get it.
that
Uh-huh.
kind of talk does make me sort of bristle a bit, but there's no other way to put it.
Yeah. Language. We
Yeah,
understand what, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that is incredibly powerful to do that. My and I'm jumping right off the subject a bit here,
That's right.
but kindness. Um, Maya Angelou, the American writer.
No, not much of a reader. Right.
Maya Angelou was a Black woman who had a very tough life. I would suggest that you read her books, some of her books. But one of her sayings was, "They will never remember what you said. They will never remember what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel." Does,
True though, isn't it?
did I make you sense there?
Oh, totally. No,
Yeah,
I totally get it.
yeah. I had my appendix removed in my late 50s. I mean, really, my late 50s. I mean, this is what teenagers are supposed to have, isn't it? Not
Hmm.
appendix there.
Yeah, it's like having the mumps when you're this age. Shouldn't happen.
Yes.
Not for us.
um, but I was taken to the theater, and this young man standing behind me. I think he was an operating department assistant. I never saw him, but the way he said things to me and the way he explained things to me was in such a kind way. And I still can't remember what he said, but he made me feel a lot calmer transferring from the trolley to the operating table. And I think that brought home to me that kindness overrides anything. And when we talk about masculinity, kindness and genuine kindness and accepted by the other person is such a powerful thing. You don't have to be masculine or feminine to actually do that.
I think kindness actually is part of masculinity, it seems. I'm just reflecting on this now. And it seems that we're being stripped of our ability to be able to choose to be kind, because it becomes weaponized against us then in
Yes,
terms of masculinity.
I think you're right. I think it does. And that becomes because of that, you get people stepping back and starting to do things that are abhorrent to what masculinity is.
Mm.
You either take it to extremes, like Andrew Tate,
Mhm.
or you go completely the other way and you get gentlemen who are doormats, I suppose, what you would call them doormats, really, because that's how we treat them and that's how people have treated them.
There's a difference between kindness and niceness, isn't there? And I remember speaking to my class when I used to be a high school teacher, my form group, and they'd say, "Oh, you're so nice, sir." And I say, "I am not nice. I'm really not a nice person, and that's pretty yucky. But I'm kind, and that's what I've wanted to be." What was it? The fox, the horse, the mole, and the something book. Remember that one? The horse, the fox, the mole,
There,
and the can't remember what it was, but one of the pages said, "When I was younger, I dreamed and I wished that I wanted to be kind," or something like that. And yeah, niceness versus kindness. Ugh, yucky niceness. Flattery, flatteur. That's the French stroking of the ones.
my late partner, when he was growing up at school, he was not allowed to use the word nice.
Oh, really?
It was actually taken, it when he was in class, the teacher actually withdrew the word nice from their vocabulary.
Well done, teacher.
And so when he was, when I say, "Oh, this is really nice, isn't it?" That's not nice. This what do you think is nice? No, that's just a weak way of saying things.
That's right. That's right. What do you actually mean by this is nice? Yeah, what are you trying to say? There's going to be nice people who are disingenuous, but kindness is genuine.
Yes, kindness if it's used properly. Yes,
Yes, yes, and it's being stripped away in society in general, and that gender aspect has been thrown in the way somehow. And no, we didn't care back then about what was male, female, whatever, and it was just how people were with the good morals, good values, that people kind to each other or not. Something's gone wrong. You mentioned as well there about now women. You said about the females now, single females bringing boys up, and we touched on something earlier on about emasculation. I think
yes.
it's a hot topic. Should we go there just briefly?
Well, we can go
In and
there.
in and
Yes.
out. Yeah, go
Um,
for it.
yes. Well, my parents are. My elder sister would say my parents are a good example of how a woman emasculates the husband. I would kind of disagree. My father was brought up in Scotland, and he was brought up to believe that he was the bee's knees, and he would always be the bee's knees, and he got the best of everything. So when he entered adult life and left home and discovered that actually he was not as good as he thought he was,
Mhm.
life became quite bitter for him. My father went to South Africa during the war to join the Air Force, and he taught airmen to fly. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. Okay.
And then after the war, he went to Rhodesia, where he married my mother, and then they went from place to place. And my father then became a farmer, and then he had four kids, but he didn't take responsibility for the kids in terms of providing a home and money for food and so on and so forth. So my mother stepped in and took over the role and said, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to have to do it because I'm going to have to clothe the kids. I'm going to have to put the kids through school. Now, my elder sister says that by doing that, my mother emasculated my father
I could see that.
because she didn't force him to take on the role of the male that he was supposed to take on.
I think I might be on your side if I want to say side. I don't agree that that's emasculating somebody.
Well, no, I don't agree with it's emasculating either. Sorry, I've got a silent stutter and sometimes it bites me in the bum. But it is an example of how some people have taken emasculate a woman's how a woman has emasculated the husband to be. I just believe it was my father deciding that he didn't want anything to have with his kids and decided that was it and he was going to let somebody else look after him
I
because
th
that's the way he was brought up.
Yeah, I think if it was emasculation, he would be a yes person. He would be doing as he was told.
But
Maybe.
then you say that you're looking at what kind of emasculation
Mm,
are we talking about?
yeah. So
The,
what kinds have we got?
well, I think you've got your yes man, the
Okay.
one who's been henpecked. I worked once with a very brilliant orthopedic surgeon. He was very good at what he did, but he was an absolute bastard. And apparently, his wife had him her thumb when he went home. So his way of being masculine, he overdid it when he went to work. So I suppose that's one way of doing it, isn't it?
I suppose so.
It-
Frustration. Mm.
yes.
Regaining one's agency somewhere else because they can't be independently agencyed at home.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, yes. I mean, and again, that's the woman emasculating her husband, isn't it?
Hmm.
So I think you do have things like that. You have men who choose to be emasculated as well. Women don't have to make a man emasculated. Some choose to choose that role because it's an easy role to play, isn't it? You can renege any responsibility. It's an expectation that a father will do what a father does. And then again, you see, we have the issue of what does the father do?
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because is it somebody applying their own understanding of what the roles would be in a family, and they would be assigning those roles to the other person. The other person says, "Well, I got a different view on this," and that's an element of control going on there.
It is strange, isn't it? Because my father and my father I believe this is a generational thing. I think I think that men of my father's generation would not have ever touched their child, male or female, in terms of giving them a hug or anything like that,
Hmm.
because it was completely against how they were being brought up. One of the things I find quite sweet is there is a black family who live just behind us, and the black father takes his children to school, but he makes sure that he holds their hands as he crosses the road. My father would have died than take my hand to cross the road.
Would he have seen that as emasculating, or would he have seen that as like effeminate or something of just
Yes,
not being a male?
yes. He thought it was very effeminate. I went to boarding school when I was 4. I went to a convent, and I remember John, my father, coming to see me one day, and I had just been at one of the boys' parties, and I had a saucer full of sweets, and I saw John across the quadrangle, and I ran over to him, and I fell over and grazed my knee,
Okay.
and I cried. Bearing in mind I was a 4-year-old boy, okay, he came over and he picked me up, and the first things he said is, "Don't you ever embarrass me again in public by crying." And I have to say that was the last time my father ever hugged me at the same time.
Grazing your knee, 4 years old.
Yeah,
There's a hug and a chastisement at the same
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Wow. Oh my
Because
goodness.
he thought that me falling over and crying was making him look
Hmm.
like an effeminate father.
Yes. Almost don't ever embarrass me again like that.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm so sorry about that. I really am. And it's very sad, isn't it? Because I think there's a tremendous amount of strength in being able to show one's love. There's and the warmth of that and the protection of it as well. Holding a child's hand crossing the street is a very masculine as well as a very feminine thing to do. It's just a very loving
I think it's a
and
wonderful
protective
thing.
thing
Yeah.
to do.
I
I,
think it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful gift. I know that it took me and still takes me a long time to allow somebody to hug me. My cousins, I hadn't seen my cousins for about 15, 16 years. And my female cousin and my male cousin came up, and both of them gave me a hug. And I was like, no, sorry. No, no, no.
mm, yeah.
I don't know you well enough. Back off, back off.
Okay.
So I do find it very uncomfortable. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that my father was very much like that. And I feel, and I could be wrong, that that was also quite a generational thing.
I think so. And you know what, as well, to be honest with you, if it's somebody I didn't know that came up to hug me, I'd feel a little bit strange because they've just come into my own safe area. It's like, oh, I don't really know you, buddy. So, but other than that, hugs are just, great. Love a hug. You got all those chemicals go around, isn't it? They say the serotonin stuff. You get a big old hug and you feel good again.
No,
Yeah.
no, no, I do find that difficult. I still find that difficult. As I say, my first partner was Spanish. And when you used to go to Spain, they used to kiss you on the cheek as well. And that was, get out of here.
Mm.
That was that was a very
It's
difficult thing
like,
to get used to.
what are you doing, bud? I only met you just now. Bloody hell. My goodness, yeah.
what words have a phenomenal effect on things, on people. When I'm talking about when I fell over when I was 4 years old,
Yeah.
and my father telling me to pull myself together,
Yeah.
still has an effect on me 58 years later. So, I'm 62 and I still find it difficult to be myself in public because he didn't allow that to happen.
It's the words.
And it was words,
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
rubbish.
Yeah.
Words can have a longer lasting effect than knives and guns. Don't get me wrong, you can get shot and be badly wounded and all the rest of it. But as Maya Angelou says, I've said to you before, they will not remember what you said or what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And those words can make you feel absolutely wonderful, or they can make you feel absolutely lousy.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
What was I was just thinking something just then as well. It's gone from my head. It'll come back, but it was oh man, I can't think. Let's rewind for just 2 minutes. No, skip forward. It'll come to me. It's very much about the strength in humans being able to love and the what's a masculine. Oh yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. Okay, right. So when we assert ourselves, let's say if we're okay, so we're raising our voice or asserting ourselves, and that used to be okay. Now, when you assert yourself, we've suddenly shouted and we're being aggressive. So that's another weird thing that's happening now. It's like, oh, geez, but I was just sticking up for you or sticking up for me, and I am not aggressive. I was asserting myself. Comments on that one?
I honestly think, I think there are an awful lot of people who are like that, are unable to accept the help of somebody else. And to accept the help of somebody else means that it's a reflection on them as being weak rather than as being strong. And I don't know where that's come from because I don't think I don't think accepting help like that is a weakness.
Hmm.
Putting it in context, of course, because if you're in the middle of a pub and somebody starts fighting with you, and one is drunk and the other is, then the whole thing it brings on a different meaning to what they're trying to do.
Mm.
But I think a lot of people find. I wonder if it is the English. What's the word I'm looking for? Keeping people at arm's length.
Mm.
English people traditionally, where I come from, were always regarded as being keeping people over there and we're over here.
Right.
So if I am going to defend you, I'm interfering with their ability to be who they are.
What about telling somebody off, going the other direction when you're not defending somebody, but when you're, well, there's a couple of ways, isn't it? Let's say if maybe you're under attack and you raise your voice, or let's say if you're just stressed out on the day and you raise your voice. Here's context. Parental alienation cases, or whatever you want to call it, parental obstruction, whatever. And you hear the person who's lost a child, and the child saying, "But you're always shouting at me," or then the other parent is saying, "But you're so aggressive," and then the parent who's separated from the child says, "But I didn't always raise my voice, and I didn't think I was aggressive. I just sometimes I raise my voice. Everybody does it. I did it as well." So I'm interested in your views on that one as well, that side of it too.
I think um, I think there's swings and roundabouts. I don't have any children myself, so I probably get a load of yells and screams and telling me that I don't have any right to say this. But I think what's happening is a lot of things that parents should be responsible for are being given up to teachers.
Mm.
And then the teachers are trying to do what they are supposed to be doing, but getting snagged by the parents who then turn around and say, don't you tell my child what to do.
Am I nodding too much? Yeah.
um, so I think I think I grew up at a time when if you did something wrong at school, we had three, if you did three things wrong, for example, when I was at high school, if you could put three fingers between your collar
Hmm.
at the back of your head, between your collar and where your hair was too long, and therefore you got a detention.
Wow.
If you didn't have your top button done at school and wearing your tie, that was also detention.
You weren't in England at the time, were you?
No,
No.
no.
Okay.
I grew up in Rhodesia.
Mm,
If you didn't bring your hymn book to assembly, that was another detention.
okay.
If you didn't have garters on your socks because we had shorts, not long trousers,
Hmm.
that was another detention. If you didn't have a hat at break time, that was another detention. If you had three detentions in a row, you were sent to the headmaster on a Friday at break time, and you were given six of the best.
A little lost for words right now. I remember my canings, and I think I really deserved those. Like, really? That's pretty sad, man. Philippe, oh my goodness.
Well, there was a lot. It's what I'm getting at, whether you disagree with it or not. What I'm getting at is the discipline was there.
Hmm.
You learned to have your hymn book with you when you went to assembly,
Yeah.
and you learned to have your button up, your belt on, your and so on, because you knew what you're going to get. And if you also, the thing is, if you had three, you also had to come back on a Friday afternoon and do manual labor. So you had to come back on a Friday afternoon and do gardening in the school for an hour or 3 hours if you had three detentions.
But you're talking about consequences, aren't you? Which I think might be lacking a bit these days.
It completely lacks. It's completely lacking. People get away with an awful lot of things that when I grew up, you didn't get away with.
Mhm.
But your parents also didn't step in and tell the school, how dare you do this to my child, because they understood that's the discipline that's happening at the school.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you do have issues where the headmaster then went too far and whatever, whatever, whatever. But that's a different issue altogether.
Mhm.
I've never heard somebody from that time say that that discipline has caused them any issues as an adult because there are boundaries.
Mhm.
When I take a look at my nieces and nephews, particularly my two younger niece and nephews, they didn't have those boundaries, and both of them are floundering quite a bit at the moment. And I think there needs to have been something there.
I think boundaries also give somebody self-discipline. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be maybe not just self-discipline as well, but we start then measuring our own self as far as what's right and wrong, and then having some thought towards others rather than being totally self-centered and thinking we can get away with anything that we want,
Yes,
which is today's
absolutely.
society.
Absolutely. And I think that there is a certain amount of boundarylessness. That's a new word, isn't it? Boundarylessness.
Boundarylessness. I like that. Yeah.
um, and it's a reneging of responsibility.
Yes.
If you're outside in society, if you're walking through London, for example, you don't just have responsibility for yourself, you have responsibility for people around you.
Yes.
And I think what we happening at the moment is, and I could be wrong again, what I feel is people are stepping away from that responsibility. And if something happens to you in the middle of the road, that's your problem. It's not mine. I'm carrying on.
That's kind of brought us full circle into that kindness thing,
Yes,
all connected.
yes,
Mm. And that
yeah,
brings us back into this, what they call parental alienation, uh, what I just say is flat out abuse. It's on that power and control wheel, which Kafka says as well. And then you've got the emasculating of the children. So we touched on emasculating, what that might look like. We didn't actually talk about what emasculation looks like to our boys. If I could just say real quick, when I was growing up as a young lad, and I grew up with my mum, and I do remember the first stepdad I had, who was a right total psychopath, man, and he absolutely was really bad news. But he did say to my mum, that boy's going to grow up to be, I won't say the word that he used, but what he meant was that boy really needs to make some decisions and get a few hard knocks and stop telling him what to do all the time and doing everything for him. That's the politest way I can say it, I think. And I think he was right. Stop protecting him from the real world, something like that.
I was very lucky, stroke unlucky, because Rhodesia became Zimbabwe about 9 months before I turned 18.
Right.
When I turned 18, I would have gone into the army for 2 years.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have had a choice. I would have had to go to the army. No, I was lucky because I didn't have to do that, and I didn't have to go into the bush, and I didn't have to experience what those people experienced, those young men experienced, because I know that on both parts, white or black or pink or whatever, the Rhodesian War was a particularly nasty war because it was a terrorist war,
Mm.
and it was a particular and terrorist wars somewhat more unpleasant than other wars are because it's sort of behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I was unlucky because I think there is a lot of discipline that is forced on a person going through that.
Right.
I think it makes people grow up a
Yeah.
lot.
Yes.
I think there is a lot to be said about conscription, and it's open for debate because there are pros and cons, like anything else. There are pros and cons to it. And I think that there are things there that actually give you the boundaries, give you the idea of who you are,
Yes.
and help you move forward. There were women in the Rhodesian army as well. So it wasn't just a man's army, it was also a woman's army. So it works on both sides. And I think there was a recognition of, I think there was I do think at the time, maybe it's gone away now, but I think at the time, there was a recognition of what men do and what women do and how they work together to be the best that two people can be.
I love that. So
You
I
know,
think we've lost that.
we have. And I think that's not to say that we didn't have divorces at home, but because they were, because people are people, people do silly things to each other. But I think in general, I think it did teach people how to recognize a man's masculinity and a woman's femininity without negating either's experience of life.
We
That
both
was
have something to offer, and we both have a little bit of each other in us as well, I think.
yeah.
And I think the whole thing of this gender has just gone ridiculous. And I do think that there's I don't know what came first, the mental illness or the mix up of this whole gender conversation-y thing of who does what and what's acceptable, what's not, toxicity, matriarchy, patriarchy, whatever. It's just, why can't people talk about just human beings and decency? That would work, wouldn't it? Applies both ways.
It applies both ways, and I suppose what you then ask yourself, what is decency? Um,
Hmm, good point.
I kind of laugh at that because one of the things I also, when you're talking about that, what comes to mind also is gay pride.
The good pride or the not so good pride?
um, there are parts of gay pride that I think are quite wonderful. And I think what happened with, and it did serve something that was particularly necessary. What I find uncomfortable, and this is me talking. This is not me
Mm.
as a general person. This is just me. Even as a gay person myself, what I do find difficult is when you have the half-dressed men or women parading down the street when there are kids about.
Can I ask why?
Find that difficult because I think there are some things, talking about decency, I think there are some things that you need to keep inside, you don't need to put outside in the public domain.
Okay.
My two male partners would never have kissed me in public, absolutely would have killed them. My first partner was very out. He was never somebody who walked down the street. Emmanuel always launched himself down the street, and you knew he was coming. You could almost hear the bells and the whistles coming before he got there. He wasn't a flamboyant dresser, but he was sort of there. Paul would have died if you had called him gay, right up until about 2 or 3 years before he died. So any public display of affection would have been complete anathema to them. Now, a couple of months ago, I got this young lad, and I'd say he was young, he was 30, and he thought I was the best thing on two legs. And I was on Oxford Street in the middle of the day, and he kissed me. I nearly died. I nearly died. Nobody batted an eyelid. When Emmanuel was alive, Emmanuel died in 1991, sorry. And I remember him wearing a pink shirt and being beaten up because that is what fucking gays do, excuse my language. Because that is disgusting. Men don't wear pink. Now men wear pink,
Mm. I
straight,
like
gay, whatever. Nobody bats an eyelid. So looking at decency, I do think certain things need to be kept inside and not for public display. I have no problems. Well, I do have a problem personally, but because that's happening to me. But in general, I have no problems with men kissing men, women kissing men, and women kissing men in public because women have kissed men and men have kissed women for years
mm.
in public. It's never been a thing to bat your eyelids to. So I don't think that is necessarily an issue. But when people walk down with their gold hot pants and their tight singlets and their waving batons and stuff like that, I find that difficult. And I think possibly things like that should be kept not on public display, as in terms of decency.
Would you say that's indecent, or would you just say that's the other type of another type of decency of that decency in indecent in an offensive way to some people? I'm just exploring here.
No, I think that's just being stupid. I think one of the issues, I think I was listening to a YouTube channel just recently, and there was a march somewhere, and men were walking down the street with leather chaps where their buttocks were on display, and they had nipple clamps and stuff like that, and they were marching past young school kids. I find that offensive. I think that should have been kept away from school kids. You know, take that to your nightclub. Take that to your nightclub where you can enjoy it in there. Don't put it on display in front of young kids who don't know what it's all about.
You
That
take
to me
me
isn't decent.
you take me into school in the libraries these days. Just thinking about it, not a topic for us for now, but just some books, and I pretty much felt the same way. And I know that some books were taken out of the library. I don't know how they got there, but leave it to people's imagination is what I'm talking about. I don't know, but let's take that further into somehow making a connection with books and other types of books, like your mum writing the book. There you go. We just made a connection there.
I think maybe it's my age, I don't know, but I find overly explicit books, not only sexually explicit books, but if you've got overly explicit in killing
Mhm.
and torture.
Mhm.
I find those unpleasant as well. You know, when somebody sits there and describes a sexual act in detail, I think to myself, well, I don't really need to know that. And when somebody describes how somebody was killed very slowly, and I don't necessarily need to know that either. And I don't need to know that because it doesn't do much to what the story should be.
Okay, thank you. It's kind of like movies these days as well, isn't it? I suppose. Back in the old days, they had a good storyline and they stuck to the storyline, and the bits were our imagination. And now they get to explicit stuff or whatever it may be, the violence and everything as well. Is that part of the storyline? I don't know. Or is that people's entertainment? And then you go, wow, entertainment.
It's arguable, isn't it? Because I mean, there are times when you can actually watch something like that and think, yeah, that was, I really enjoyed that. But there is a place for it.
Like in a good Dracula movie?
No, I don't like movies like that, you see. So I would probably turn
Mm,
around and say, no, that is too explicit.
mm.
You know, the old Hammer horror
Thinking of them now.
movies.
Yeah.
I think they are probably sort of at the limit.
Hmm.
But when you get the modern ones where it's very graphic about how it all happens and the blood spurts out and that sort of thing, that's not necessarily necessary. And when they shoot somebody and you see the blood spurting all over the wall, that's not necessary either.
Yeah. We used to be okay with just a little bit of ketchup there, didn't we? You know,
Well, yes,
just
and I think
enjoyed that.
sometimes, and this is probably what's happened, is we've got too used to the explicit that the subtle loses its power.
Subtlety is a big thing, isn't it? And it seems to be gone. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking there was now here you see, this is my age telling me because now I've forgotten her name. She's one of the silent stars, Garbo, I
Greta
think.
Garbo.
Yes.
Yes. Showing
Now
my
she
age now.
did a film, I think it was when she was the Russian. She came over as the Russian. It was Greta Garbo who did that film. Don't answer because you're like me and I can't remember.
I
And
don't know.
the
Not
fact
Marlena
that
Dietrich. Even though just knowing these names is showing our age. People get, who's
yeah,
that?
yeah, exactly. But the end of the movie, she apparently lies back on the couch to have sex with the man.
Mhm.
But instead of showing it, what you see is her hand coming over and it's got the big ring on it. And the ring falls off her hand. And that's how they know what happened on the other side of the couch. You didn't see it, but you know it happened because the symbol of the ring falling off her hand was that. And
Yes.
that's a very powerful bit of cinema where you see the two of them at it like bloody rabbits. That has lost a lot of that romantic power
Hmm. Hmm.
that through that.
I think so. And I think again that comes right the way back to when we were talking about the masculinity and just about opening the doors for people and the subtlety of a smile at somebody and just an expression of somebody and someone else looking back. It's just to say a very subtle thank you or I like you too. But now we don't know where we are unless it's explicit right in our face. It's my son and I just the other day we had this amazing conversation. He like talks really deep. He makes films and he writes stuff. He's very interested in the underlying themes and so on. And he brought up a word. He said, "Dad, do you know about ontology?" No, not quite. And he says, "Well, ology, the study of, and ontos being the Greek word for that which is. So ontology." And he was trying to help me understand it. So, have you ontology? What about you, Philippe?
Well, it's a bit of a difficult one, but the one that springs to mind is the story, the Ring trilogy.
Yes, uh-huh. Yes,
Yes.
great. Yeah.
Now that is a treaty on Catholicism
Catholicism.
and
Okay.
how Catholicism works. It was once explained to me, but I just remember, at the end when the ghosts come, when
Yeah,
the ghosts are
yes, yes,
forgiven.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Now that is supposed to have something to do with the Holy Ghost. Go
Okay,
with the flow, because this is my interpretation of what somebody said to me, and I have to admit that it was way above my head.
okay,
My understanding of it was above my head. But the other one that comes to mind is Star Wars.
okay.
Star
Like
Wars,
Star Wars.
because you have the themes of good and evil in the Star Wars.
Right.
So all the baddies are dressed as black in black,
Yeah, right. Yes.
all the goodies are dressed in white
Okay.
or slightly grey because they're sort of naughty people. The Harrison Ford character doesn't always dress in white because he has a bit of a interesting background.
Okay.
But you also have some of the troopers who fight for the Empire are dressed
Yes.
in grey
Star Wars. Yes.
because
Yes.
they're not quite bad, but they're not quite good.
Okay.
And as we see, the last trilogies that we had, who was the actor, I can't remember his name, but the black actor was one of the troopers, and he stopped being a trooper and became part of the good team.
Okay.
So there you have the idea of the good, the bad, and the not so good.
That's right. I thought you were going to say the good, the bad, and the ugly there with
I
Clint
nearly did.
Eastwood. Great,
I nearly
great
did.
movie. I love that movie. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Can I
Yes.
bring you now to, since we're talking about cinema, we're talking about books and things like that. Your mum wrote a book. Could you hold it up and see
Oh,
what that
yes.
book is? This I've
Yes.
had some people that a daughter of Africa can see that really well.
Yes. It's actually Ronnie's story, A Daughter of Africa.
Is that your mum?
Yes.
She's beautiful.
She
She's
was
abs
16, I think. I think she was 16 when that photograph was taken.
she's absolutely gorgeous, man.
Thank you.
Philly, wow, you're welcome. Very welcome. What's the book about?
The book is about her life up until 1969.
Okay.
Um, it's also a story about my grandmother. My grandmother was born in Birmingham. Birmingham.
Birmingham. I was from Birmingham. Am still from Birmingham.
And my great grandparents, that was my great grandmother's first marriage, but my great grandfather's second marriage.
Okay. Let's think about that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Got it.
So my great grandmother was 29 and my great grandfather was 65.
Okay.
So she had three kids, and then my great grandfather decided to die. So my great grandmother packed her three daughters at the time. So my grandmother would have been seven, and took them to South Africa, to Camps Bay, just outside of Cape Town. Now, the family story was that she was going to meet her brother, who was a medical doctor, and he was exploring up north, really high up north, actually, because her husband had died and he was going to help support the family, etc., etc., etc. So my grandmother arrived in Camps Bay in 1897. At the time, you had the Matabele Rebellion was happening in Rhodesia at the time.
Did she write about that in the book?
Not quite, not
Okay.
quite. Because Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes, refused permission for my grandmother to go north because of the Matabele Rebellion.
Okay.
So my grandmother and my great grandmother ended up staying in Camps Bay. And because they came from a very well-to-do family, they lived in genteel poverty, basically for the rest of my great grandmother's life, I think. When my grandmother turned about 21, 22, she, with the help of the priest, collected wildflowers and made them into cards and sold them. And with that amount of money, she ran away from home to Johannesburg and trained as a nurse. She then, as a trained nurse, went and nursed in East Africa during the time of the Spanish flu
Okay.
at the First World War.
Yeah.
and she was awarded 2 or 3 medals for her nursing experience. But because she was a woman, it is not recorded in the South African records because they were not regarded as worthy of being recorded.
That's pretty rubbish. I'm so sorry. Are they going to change that? Did they ever? 'Cause they should.
I have no idea. I
Okay.
have no idea.
Right. So anybody
Uh,
listening over there, that's got to change. Not
yeah.
who are we, but they deserve that. It's not fair.
These women were called the Bluebells because they wore blue capes, and so they were known as the Bluebells.
Beautiful name. Mm.
My grandfather was born in Pietermaritzburg, in just outside, no, between Johannesburg and Durban, and he grew up and became a bank manager.
Hmm.
And then after the war, I don't think he fought in the war because I have no record of him fighting in the First World War.
You looked all this up.
Yes.
Okay. What an adventure.
Um, my grandmother must have been 28 or 29 when she got married. My eldest aunt was born in Pietermaritzburg, and then my grandfather caught the gold bug.
What's the gold bug? I don't know what the gold bug
He went
is.
prospecting for gold.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Yeah, the gold bug.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Big
he
killer.
then piled all his family into a car. I presume it was a car,
Mm.
and took them to Rhodesia. And between mining and the mines failed, and farming and the farms failed, my
Okay.
aunt, my middle aunt, was born in a little town. I don't even know why they called it a town, Rusape, which is, no, you would never have heard about it. Only
Never
people who've
have.
actually grown
Never
up
have.
there know about Rusape because it was so small.
I know Birmingham.
No, Rusape isn't her, as where I come from. Um, and then my grandmother was in charge of a children's home when my mother was born in Umtali.
Okay.
Umtali is a town on the Mozambique-Rhodesian border. Then, when my mother was 12 years old, my grandfather died of stomach cancer. And my grandmother sat next to him in the last 6 months of his life and hand sewed a shroud for him, which I think is incredibly macabre.
I don't
But
think people do that too often these days, do they?
oh no, no, no! You get put in those dreadful plastic things. Ugh, I can even still smell them. Oh, they're horrible
Mm.
things.
Never been in one myself, but yeah,
No, I
dread the
have
time,
I have
obviously.
done I have dressed several people in them. So yes, no, they're not nice.
Mm. So
Uh,
you all this story that you're telling me, this is part of a majority is part of the book, and she's explaining what life was like growing up in Africa.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
It's a
And
very long-winded story.
no, it's a big thick book, and the fact that it's actually been made into a book has got to attracted people's interest and her own want and desire to actually write about it. So there's a lot of color there, and we were talking about imagination earlier on, and that reading through this, I'm just picturing, Mozambique, and not that I know too much about the plains of Africa or whatever it may be, but it conjures up that boy spirit of adventure. I don't know, that's what I'm
Well, it
picturing.
did because there are no roads. There
Hmm.
were tar roads at that time. It was just gravel roads.
Right.
If it rained, the roads got washed away, and it's about 3, 4 hours between each town. So it's a long way. You can't just stop off at the nearest pump because there isn't one.
No, you're not going to get McDonald's along the way either.
You're not going to get McDonald's on the way, no. And my mother also remembers when they were living in Namtali, they would all go to an old couple not too far from where they lived because they were the only ones who had a wireless.
Oh, wow. Wow. For those
Uh,
people who are just too young to know, a wireless is something like a radio.
yes. Um, and that's the only way they got any news from the outside world. And that was once a week.
Wow. A shot of
Um,
far cry from the internet.
yes. God
Mm.
help us with our mobile phones. Yeah.
No kidding. Jeez. You watch telly on the mobile phone these days.
Absolutely. My grandfather died, and my grandmother then went to Salisbury and started a guest house for gentlemen minors as well.
Okay.
She was very busy and kind of left my mother to be brought up by her two sisters. And God forgive them, my aunt, my eldest aunt was about 15 or 16 at the time, was getting very interested in boys. So she didn't want to get holed up with this 11-year-old girl. And my middle aunt had scarlet fever, so had a damaged heart. And so she was the diva and didn't want to be troubled by. So my mother was sort of brought up by herself, basically.
Yeah, it's almost like she was stuck in the middle of it and nobody saw her and she was on her own, like you said.
Yes.
Yeah, tough place to
Um,
be, especially where she was at.
and then she married my father. My father, as I say, was a Scotsman who went out to South Africa during the Second World War,
Hmm.
who was he was an airman, and he taught people how to fly the planes.
Yeah. So you're a Scottish and a Midlands guy, really, aren't you? Descendant.
If you're pushing it, yes.
I'm pushing it. I'm pushing. Yeah, way, way, way back. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, Yorkshire.
Yorkshire. Okay.
I'll tell you something. My my grandfather's family on my mother's side comes from Barnsley in Yorkshire. When I went to live in Yorkshire with Paul, I didn't know anything about this at the time.
Hmm.
But the village I lived in with Paul was 2 miles away from Barnsley.
If only you'd known at the time.
Mm. I did know eventually, but it is funny how there are a lot of stories of people who have gone to certain places and not realized that's actually where their family originated from.
Well, I can tell you something there, Philippe. My goodness, my uncle Eric over in Australia, because I'd lost my entire paternal side of the family when I was 7 years old, and a fair bit older than that now. My uncle Eric, 4 years ago, started sending me photos and recordings and so on. And on one of these recordings, I'm listening to it, and oh, you would not believe it. One of the aunties from back then mentioned, oh, so and so's gone moved over to Western Supermare. Western Supermare is just 15 minutes away from where I'm at now. So it's the exact same kind of thing, a couple of miles away.
Yeah,
How weird is that? Western Supermare, long lost family.
it
Just
is.
doesn't.
It is strange how often people do things like that. Yeah.
Mm, very strange. You mentioned earlier on about not something about you would not relish the thought of publishing a book, maybe writing one, but not being involved in self-publishing. And that struck my attention because I've interviewed a couple of people who've written books, and I know a couple of other people who would love to write a book. Me too. Why would you not want to self-publish a book?
Well, yes. I didn't actually. Well, I got my mom's book published purely to keep it in one piece. I didn't necessarily
Okay.
publish it because I published it after she died, and I'm never going back to Peterborough. Not because I don't like Peterborough, but because I don't have any reason to go back to Peterborough.
Hmm.
That's where her ashes are spread.
Okay.
And we don't have a memorial stone for her there either. So I had the book published to sort of act as a memorial and also to be in one piece so that the grandkids could have an idea of what her life was like. I had the book published. It cost me quite a lot of money. And then the publishing house disappeared into thin air.
Did you lose money? You put a lot of money in and then
Mm-hmm.
they've disappeared, and
Mm-hmm.
along with the money's gone too.
It is.
Jeez, man.
And I left it because, as I say, I didn't necessarily publish it to be sold. I published it so that I could have a something in my hand that I could hand on to the kids, to my nieces and nephews. Then another company got hold of me and said, "Oh no, this is such a wonderful story. We'll take over and we'll publish it." So I said, "Oh, all right." So I spent another lot of money, had it published, and they did nothing with the book at all. And they also then suddenly went bankrupt.
Oh my crikeys. You're giving me a story, like an insight into publishing. I honestly, oh man, I didn't
Uh,
know this existed.
then last year, I got called by another company who said, "Right, your book is such a wonderful book. We will publish it and we'll make sure that it doesn't get published under the name of any of the other houses." So I said, okay, I'll do that then. So currently it is being published in Kindle, softback, and hardback. I will give it to the company that I'm with now. They've done a lot more with the book in terms of trying to publicize it. It's been to several international book fairs, which didn't happen with the other ones. Now they are wanting me to spend another 2,000 or another £1,000 to make a advert for it so that it can then be more accessible to bigger houses. So they will take it on. And I don't have the money for that, thank you very much, because I haven't seen anything back from anything that I've got paid for.
Yeah.
But not only that, a different company has taken part of it on and are doing it as an audible book.
So what would you recommend? Let's say if I write a book and you say, Kev, here's the
I
things you got
would
to watch out for. Here's how you do it.
I would probably seriously look towards finding an agent to do it because an agent doesn't get paid by you. The agent gets paid by the fact that somebody takes the book on. Making sense?
Yes. So
I have spent an awful lot of money getting this book to where it is at the moment, and I've had very little. I think I've had $25 back.
oh, crikeys.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a lot of thousands of pounds right there. So
it
you're saying
is.
to me, if you go through the agency is going to make sure they do a job because otherwise they're not really going to get paid anything extra. They want to get those bonuses, I'm
Not
hearing.
an agency, an agent.
Got you? Okay.
Yeah, an agent.
Okay.
Because they are the ones with the clout. You don't have a clout. I was at the London Book Fair a month or two ago,
Right.
and the bigger publishing houses do not talk to authors. They will only talk to what they were telling me
Okay.
then. Okay, they probably turn around and say, "Oh no, of course we talk to authors."
Mm.
What I was being told was they don't talk to authors; they talk to agents, and they will then listen to the agent. And the agent has a lot more clout than we have.
It's a real achievement getting the book published by if people have never gone through that before and they went down the same avenues as you. Chances are they could have lost out or whatever it might have been. But even going through an agent, so that's the best bet to do that. They might take a bigger cut, but at least you're not going to lose a ton of money.
And don't expect to make a lot of money out of it
Okay. Why do people want to write a book then? I know why you put one together.
because apart from my mother's book, forget my mother's book, but I think a lot of people have a burning issue to write a book and get it out there.
Okay.
And I think all good on them. You know, it's wonderful. I'm all for that sort of thing. I think literature is wonderful. Literature is wonderful. If only people could write the proper English these days, I think it would be much easier to read.
No comment. Yeah,
Yeah.
too right.
I know from having spoken to quite a few of the authors that I met at the London Book Fair, they have the same story that I do. You spend an awful lot of money
Mhm.
for very, very little back. And I was listening to a blog on YouTube the other day of two people, can't remember what the names were, and they say that an author is very lucky to make about £7,000 a year from his book.
Oh, geez. It's like really different from what I thought it was going to be. Honestly, I thought, well, if you're going to be a writer, then it's going to get out there. Somebody's going to like bind it, publish it, maybe edit it, whatever it might be. And your book goes on the shelf somewhere and then it gets sold. So you might get like 10% or whatever. And it's not like that, is it?
No, no,
No.
it isn't like that. It may be like that if you get an agent and they push it that way, but
Okay.
self-publishing, you are mostly doing it yourself, and the publishers are just sitting there saying, "Okay, we'll hold the book, you do the rest."
Okay.
So
Okay.
you need to pay to go to this book fair. You need to go to pay to that book fair. You need to go to pay to the next book fair. You need to go and do this at that book fair.
Okay.
So an agent does that for you.
So self-publishing is you doing it, and agents going through an agent is not self-publishing.
Basically,
Okay. Makes sense.
self-publishing is a lot of money, a phenomenal amount of patience. And if you're in England, I would probably suggest, not that I want to advertise them, but I believe Waterstones have a department that will publish your book.
Wow. Okay.
So you need to just have a look and see, but they will choose your book. You can't just walk in there and say, I have a book, and they say, oh yes, lovely, lovely, we'll publish it for you. They will make sure that the book is actually worth publishing. So bearing in mind, this is my experience.
Okay. You do me a favor and then we'll wrap this all up. It's been an amazing chat, superb chat. I'm just trying to figure out how do we end it off, because we've been, I think, on here for an hour. And I'm looking forward to getting this out, because it's very different from the other topics that I speak about. It's really refreshing just to get away from the normal topics. And so could you do me the honor, and everyone else the honor, of reading maybe the foreword or whatever kind of little paragraph it is on the book that says what the book's about? I don't know if it comes on the back of the book or the front page. And then we'll say ta to everybody. And yeah, right. So it is Daughter from Africa.
Okay, what I do is, this is the story of Veronica Walker,
Okay.
a second generation white African. This is a story of how one woman learned to accept loss and rebuild her life time and time again. How she learned to fight for herself in a society where women were deemed as second-class citizens and the possessions of their husbands or fathers. Fighting for her children's safety, Veronica learns to demand her voice be heard and she be accepted for the independent woman that she was. Ronnie was our mother, and her life was extraordinary. Born in southern Rhodesia, she grew up not as a privileged white child in colonial Africa, but the daughter of a failed gold prospector. Her early life was one lived close to poverty in colonial environment where Europeans were supposedly wealthy and successful. She grew up to have the free spirit of Africa in her very bones. She had a pioneer's strength of character that allowed her to triumph over adversity, which was a constant in her life. Veronica had a wicked sense of humor and a dogged determination. She did not suffer fools gladly, but was known for picking up and nurturing strays, whether human or animal. She loved each of her children for the individuals they were, and for that we will always love and cherish her memories found in this book.
That's so warm. It's a lovely book.
Yeah.
Thank you. Where can people get it, please?
It is available on Amazon at the moment, so you can actually buy it Kindle, soft cover, hardback, and shortly you will be able to get it on Audible. And I have also been interviewed by somebody called Logan Crawford about the book on YouTube as well. So it's also on YouTube as well, which I'm very bad at advertising on your channel. I do apologize.
Send me the link on that one when it gets done, and I'll put that on the bottom of this as well. And I'll put, I don't know what kind of details, if you can send me like a direct link to anywhere for that book too, and I'll put that in the description too. And yeah, wow. It's kind of like gone full circle again, isn't it? Because they were talking about your mum and about how that she was having to raise the children by herself. It's like everything connects. So strange how everything's connected in this conversation.
I think it's a lot of female resilience that goes in there as well.
Yes, the female resilience. Yes, which I think to bring out resilience itself, that's one of the words we didn't actually mention. Resilience in today's society, I think we could do in bucketfuls. I've really enjoyed today. Thank you so much. Yeah.
My pleasure as well. It's been a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody else, if you can, possibly, if you need to get in touch with me at all, or Phillipe even as well, then do email me. That is, if you need support, it's support@thepowerandcontrolwheel.co.uk. And if it's just general inquiries, it's info@thepowerandcontrolwheel.co.uk. The Facebook is thepowerandcontrolwheel.co.uk. And can you please remember to like, share, and subscribe? These kind of stories and these conversations are fascinating. We never know where they go, but they go naturally. And I think today there's a lot of, I think, really important kind of societal stuff that we can pick and choose from as well. If there's anything that you don't agree with, please don't fire back at us or anything. Let's all be civil on this. But it was just really fun to explore all of this. And so I think we'll call it a day on there. Phillipe, thank you so, so much. And you take care of yourself, okay?
And you too. Thank you very much indeed. Yes.
Thank you. Everybody else, you'll take care of yourselves as well. God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.